Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take stacks of information, pull out the key nuggets, and get you properly informed. And today, we're diving into something really ancient, but also weirdly relevant right now. Have you ever noticed how humanity's oldest stories, across totally different cultures, they often share the surprisingly consistent theme? A world getting wiped clean by some huge cataclysm.
Yeah, it's way more than just a coincidence, isn't it? This deep dive is all about exploring that fascinating, really persistent idea of a recurring deluge or maybe a cyclical reset of civilization. It's like this archetype that just keeps popping up in our collective thinking, a pattern as old as memory itself.
Right. And to try and unravel this pattern, we're digging through a really wild mix of sources today. We're talking ancient Sumerian tablets, the mysterious Book of Enoch, modern science looking at ice ages and sea level rise, and even some pretty current UFO claims. Our mission basically is to uncover the surprising facts, maybe connect some dots between these seemingly disparate ideas, and see if these ancient patterns actually hold any, profound lessons for us right now.
Okay, so let's start that journey by looking at this idea of the world before the flood. Lots of ancient traditions, they don't just describe an earlier world, but one that was fundamentally different from ours. It really points towards maybe a deeply rooted cultural memory of some lost age, almost a primordial state.
Yeah, and it's striking how the details line up sometimes. You look at Genesis or the Sumerian heir to Genesis, and they paint this picture of fantastically long human lifespans.
Right. Hundreds of years sometimes.
And direct contact between humans and the divine. Think about it. Gods or God literally walking the earth among people. It wasn't just an older time. It sounds like a different kind of reality, a whole different relationship with the cosmos.
Exactly. And that difference apparently went right down to the physical world itself. A lot of these traditions talk about a unique water cycle, one without rain.
Oh, yeah. How did that work then?
Well, Genesis mentions the earth being watered by mists rising from the ground, fed by this subterranean deep. And Mesopotamian cosmology, it also saw the world as kind of a roof over the Apsu, this primordial freshwater ocean underneath, the source of all springs and rivers. It's a remarkably coherent model for, a self-sustaining world before modern science.
But okay, this paradise, it doesn't last, right? That's the other common thread. The slide into chaos seems universal in these stories, and it's not just people behaving badly.
No, it's more systemic.
Genesis talks about the earth being filled with violence, but Sumerian lore mentions human noise, which people often interpret as overpopulation and social chaos, that it actually disturbed the gods. So it wasn't just a slip-up, it was a total breakdown of the social fabric, right? Yeah. A fundamental disruption that almost, begged for a cosmic reset.
And that breakdown often points to this really central idea in many of these stories, this archetype of an external, non-human agent. These beings often act as a catalyst, introducing maybe disruptive knowledge or technology that humanity is just, not ready for.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating, I think. In some of the Judaic Apocrypha, like the Book of Enoch, which isn't in the standard Bible, we should say.
Right, non-canonical.
We get the Watchers. These were supposedly 200 celestial beings who came down, took human wives, and produced these destructive giants, the Nephilim, who the texts say just consumed everything and even turned to cannibalism. Pretty grim stuff.
Very grim. But the core of their sin, according to Enoch, isn't just lust. It's the forbidden knowledge they cast on. And it wasn't vague evil. It was specific stuff. As Izel taught metallurgy, how to make swords, knives, shields. Others taught enchantments, astrology, even cosmetics.
Huh. So a sudden tech jump.
Exactly, an unearned technological uplift. And the text explicitly says this is what caused the widespread violence and lawlessness. It made the earth literally cry out for judgment.
And that's interesting because you see a parallel, but also a contrast in Mesopotamian lore with the Apkallu.
Right. The Apkallu, these were 7 antediluvian sages, often shown as fish-like beings who, unlike the Watchers, benevolently brought foundational knowledge, arts, crafts, writing, law from the god of wisdom, Enki or Ea.
Okay, so they're the good guys bringing helpful tech.
Essentially, yes. And Anapishtim, the flood hero in their stories, he's sometimes seen as the last human Apkallu, the one who preserves that wisdom through the flood itself.
So if you put those two together, the Watchers and the Apkallu.
Well, it highlights this really profound ancient idea. The exact same act, transferring knowledge from outside, can be seen as either civilizing or corrupting. The outcome seems to hinge entirely on humanity's wisdom, its moral maturity at the time.
And that idea I mean, it really echoes today, doesn't it? With things like AI or genetic engineering. Are we ready for the power we're developing?
It resonates very powerfully. It's an ancient warning playing out with modern variables.
That's a crucial point, the idea that the knowledge itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's about us. Maybe that wisdom, or avoiding corruption, is tied to the reset itself. Which brings us back to the flood. I mean, the story of a world-destroying deluge, it's got to be one of the most common motifs in mythology worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. If you compare them systematically, you see this universal structure, but you also see really profound ideological differences, especially about why the reset happens and, if it's cyclical.
Right, like the Mesopotamian version you mentioned, the human noise, the overpopulation bothering the gods. The hero, Anapishtim, he gets immortality, and this ancient royal wisdom is preserved. It's like a direct handover of governance to the next age.
Then you contrast that with the Hebrew narrative in Genesis. Clearly related, obviously, but reframed. Here, the reason is explicitly moral corruption, wickedness. And the outcome isn't immortality for Noah, but a covenant with God, a promise not to do a total water reset again. The focus shifts to preserving biological life and establishing a moral framework.
And then you have, say, Hindu mythology with Vaivasvata Manu and the fish avatar of Vishnu.
Yeah, Matsya. In that tradition, the flood, the pralaya, isn't really a punishment. It's presented more as a natural recurring event within vast cosmic cycles, kalpas. It's just the end of an age. Manu's role is to preserve all the species and the sacred Vedas, the knowledge, the law, to start the next cycle correctly.
Okay, and what about somewhere like Mesoamerica, the Aztecs?
Similar cyclical ideas there, too. The Aztec myth of the five suns talks about repeating cycles of creation and destruction. The fourth sun, they believed, ended in a massive flood that turned people into fish. It cleared the way for the current era, the fifth sun.
So, across these different stories, the ark itself, it seems like more than just a boat for survival.
Definitely. It's almost a metaphor, isn't it? A kind of civilizational seed bank. Noah's Ark saves the genetic code, yes. But Utnapishtim carries cultural and royal knowledge. Manu preserves the Vedas, the spiritual and legal code. Even the Aztec survivors, they take corn, the basis of their agriculture, into the new world.
So the hero isn't just surviving, they're curating.
Exactly. The ark is the mechanism. It transmits the critical data, whether that's genetic, cultural, legal, spiritual, from one cycle to the next. The reset isn't a total wipe. It's more like hitting reboot but loading from a saved state. It ensures continuity of something essential, not just raw life.
Speaking of reboots, these myths, maybe they aren't purely symbolic. There's some fascinating scientific work looking into actual real-world cataclysms that could have planted these seeds in our collective memory.
Indeed. Take the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, the YDIH. It's still controversial, mind you, but it suggests a major cometary impact or maybe airbursts over the North American ice sheet, roughly 12,900 years ago.
And the evidence for that is what exactly?
Proponents point to things like these black mat layers found in sediments from that time, which they say contain unusual stuff. Spikes in platinum, tiny nanodiamonds, little spheres of melted glass, things you might expect from a high-energy impact event.
But it's controversial, you said.
Highly. Critics raise serious questions like, other independent teams have had trouble consistently reproducing those key findings. And maybe the biggest issue, there's no confirmed smoking gun impact crater of the right age and size. So the debate is, well, pretty intense in the scientific community.
Okay, so that was debated. But what about something less controversial, like sea levels rising after the Ice Age?
No, that's different. Post-glacial sea level rise is a scientifically established fact. As those enormous ice sheets melted, starting around, say, 20,000 years ago, global sea levels rose dramatically. We're talking up to 125 meters, maybe 400 feet, over millennia.
125 meters, that's huge. It must have completely changed the coastlines.
Absolutely. Whole land masses disappeared under the waves. You have these vast, drowned landscapes like Doggerland, which used to connect Britain to mainland Europe.
Right, I've heard of Doggerland. Prime hunting ground, what of that?
Exactly. And Sundaland in Southeast Asia, an area twice the size of India, now largely submerged. These were prime real estate for human settlement. Doggerland itself went under between roughly 10,000 and 6,500 BCE, and there might have been sudden catastrophic events mixed in, like a massive tsunami from the Storegga Slide off Norway around 6,200 BCE, which would have devastated coastal communities in Doggerland.
You can imagine how events like that, even the slow creep of the water over generations, would leave a deep psychological scar. Stories passed down.
Precisely. So the Great Flood myth, it's likely a kind of psychological and cultural merging, a conflation of different things.
Yeah.
You have the slow, relentless global trauma of sea level rise, which is maybe too slow and vast to easily turn into a single story.
Right. Hard to make a narrative out of something that takes centuries.
But then you have dramatic, terrifying local events like the huge river floods common in Mesopotamia. These provide a vivid, relatable narrative template, and those memories of coastal inundation may be fragmented over time. They get absorbed into that flood story framework.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis or something like it were ever proven true, well, that could potentially add those really apocalyptic elements you find in some myths. The fire from the sky, the sudden darkness, the cosmic terror. It would create this powerful composite memory of a world-altering reset.
So, okay, ancient worlds had their watchers, their floods, maybe even impacts. What about us here, now? Are there contemporary signs, modern harbingers of a similar kind of global reset?
Well, it's interesting how the archetypes adapt. In our modern, more secular world, that ancient idea of divine or angelic intervention, it often gets sort of replaced by the mythos of alien visitation, doesn't it?
You mean UFOs?
Exactly. The idea of an external, non-human intelligence showing up and potentially triggering a civilizational reset, its most potent modern form is probably in ufology.
And there's that specific claim you hear sometimes about something big happening in 2027.
Yes, the 2027 UFO claim. It's important to understand this isn't really a coherent prophecy with a single source. It's more like a piece of modern folklore, almost a meme, that circulates in online conspiracy communities. People attribute it to supposed time travelers
Right.
or anonymous ex-intelligence insiders.
So not exactly reliable.
Not based on evidence, no,
Yeah.
but its power comes from how it taps into that ancient archetype we've been discussing. Its resonance isn't about credibility, it's about fitting the pattern.
And it ties into the broader idea of, what's the term, the ETH.
Right, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The idea that UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, the current official term, are actually non-human spacecraft. And the ETH itself, it's evolved over time. You had the hopeful space brother narratives in the 50s and 60s.
Waiting to help us.
Yeah. But that's shifted more towards darker theories involving government cover-ups, maybe even malevolent alien agendas. In a way, the aliens have become the new gods or watchers, and their predicted arrival, whether it's 2027 or some other time, serves as a modern version of that ancient expectation of judgment or a reset.
It also seems to parallel some more mainstream scientific thinking, like the Fermi paradox.
Absolutely. The Fermi paradox, where is everybody? Why does the universe seem so silent if life should be common? And some of the proposed scientific solutions, they echo these ancient themes of risk.
Like the Great Filter.
Exactly. The idea that there's some huge hurdle that civilizations rarely overcome. Maybe it's developing intelligence, maybe it's surviving technology, like nuclear weapons or AI.
Yeah.
Maybe it's self-destruction. Or you have the dark forest hypothesis,
Which is
the unsettling idea that the universe is teeming with life, but everyone stays silent because it's too dangerous to reveal yourself. The first instinct upon detecting another civilization, in this view, should be to destroy it before it destroys you. It's a grim take, but again, it resonates with those deep-seated anxieties about civilizational risk and collapse.
so analyzing something like the 2027 claim, not for its truth, but for what it says about us.
It reveals, I think, a really deep-seated psychological need, maybe often subconscious, for some kind of external force to intervene, to change our current trajectory. It's a modern myth, really, of the Watchers returning, whether they bring salvation or destruction. It speaks volumes about our collective unease about where we're heading.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. And it links back to those ancient myths about hubris, doesn't it? Like Babel or the Aztec Five Sons. They feel like metaphors for technological overreach leading to collapse. Then you can certainly see parallels today. We're building our own modern towers, maybe without checking the foundations properly.
We certainly seem to be. Take CRISPR gene editing technology, the power to literally rewrite the code of life itself. That's a direct attempt to seize control of evolution, isn't it?
Especially germline editing.
Precisely. Making changes to our DNA that would be passed down forever. The ethical questions are just enormous. Unintended consequences down the line, the potential for a genetic class system, a sort of high-tech eugenics. It feels like the ultimate expression of that hubris, playing God with our own biology.
And then there's artificial intelligence, specifically the race towards AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Creating minds that could potentially surpass our own in every intellectual domain.
The risks there feel huge, too. losing human agency, algorithms with hidden biases controlling more of our lives, autonomous weapon systems making life or death decisions.
And the ultimate existential risk, creating a superintelligence we simply can't control or even fully understand. Imagine offloading the biggest questions about society, governance, even morality, to something we built but can no longer comprehend. That's a Tower of Babel unlike anything before it.
And another tower? Mass surveillance?
Oh, absolutely. The construction of these vast interconnected networks using facial recognition, automatic license plate readers, ALPRs, intercepting digital communications. It's an attempt at total societal omniscience, total control. It fundamentally alters power dynamics, chills dissent, erodes democracy from within. It's like a digital panopticon, a tower built for watching everyone all the time.
So if those are the towers, what's the modern equivalent of the confusion of tongues that the Babel myth warns about? The thing that brings it all down.
I think you could argue it's the systemic erosion of trust and cooperation, largely driven by endemic global corruption. Just have to look at something like the Corruption Perceptions Index. The 2024 results were, frankly, alarming. Over two-thirds of countries scoring below 50 out of 100, indicating serious corruption problems.
And that has real-world consequences, blocking progress on major issues.
Absolutely. Take climate change, arguably the existential threat we face. The global failure to act decisively is explicitly linked by many analysts to the political influence of powerful lobbies, like the fossil fuel industry, enabled by this pervasive corruption and lack of transparency.
So it's a dangerous mix. Unprecedented technological power.
Combined with unchecked corruption and a breakdown in our ability to cooperate globally, it creates exactly the kind of environment where systemic collapse becomes thinkable. The ancient myths basically warned us. New, powerful tools in the hands of a morally immature or corrupt society. That leads inevitably towards collapse.
Given these anxieties, it's maybe not surprising that modern society has started building its own versions of the Ark, right? Ways to preserve things for a potential restart after a catastrophe. How do these stack up against the ancient ideas?
Well, the most obvious parallels are what you might call biological arcs. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is the prime example, the Doomsday Vault up in the Arctic.
Right, saving seeds from all the world's crops.
Exactly, safeguarding that genetic diversity. And on a smaller scale, you see the prepper movement, people stockpiling heirloom seed kits, focusing on food security after some kind of collapse.
And beyond biology, are there societal arcs?
I think so. You could see official government plans, international agreements for post-disaster recovery and reconstruction as a form of societal arc building. They're blueprints for how to rebuild infrastructure, governance, economies. And increasingly, they're trying to incorporate ideas about social equity, environmental resilience, thinking about how to build back better, not just rebuild.
It should sound like there's a but coming.
Well, yes. Here's where I think there's a critical, maybe even fatal divergence from the ancient models. Our modern arc strategies, they seem overwhelmingly focused on preserving the hardware, the genetics, the infrastructure plans, and the software, the data, the information.
Okay. What are they missing?
They seem to be largely neglecting what you might call the operating system, the cultural, ethical, and political wisdom needed to actually run a stable, just, and resilient society.
That's a really powerful point. Because the ancient myths, they always emphasize the cargo beyond the physical, don't they? Utnapishtim carried ancient wisdom. Manu saved the Vedas, the sacred laws. Noah was chosen for his righteousness, representing a moral reset.
Exactly. The corruption that supposedly caused the mythical flood was primarily moral and social, not a technical failure. So if our modern focus is just on saving the seeds and the blueprints, we might be missing the most important part of the ancient warning.
It's like packing the lifeboat with tools and rations, but forgetting the compass and the knowledge of how to navigate.
That's a great analogy. Think about it. Our modern arcs are getting packed with the supplies, seeds, plans, data, but are we remembering to pack the user manual for civilization itself? The ancient myths are practically screaming at us that the real corruption wasn't just about, faulty tech or bad weather. It was about broken ethics, lost wisdom, unchecked hubris.
So if our modern arc just carries the hardware and software, but none of that operating system for building a just society,
then we're potentially just setting ourselves up to repeat the same mistakes, ensuring the next cycle ends in the same kind of failure. We risk rebooting the problem, not solving it.
It really feels like that sometimes. Okay, so if we pull all these threads together, the ancient myths, the scientific possibilities, the modern anxieties, can we actually outline a kind of speculative but maybe coherent hypothesis of a recurring civilizational cycle, a reset cycle?
I think we can. The patterns across myths, history, and even some systemic theories seem to converge on a recurring multi-stage process. We could probably break it down into, say, 7 archetypal stages.
Okay, let's hear them. Stage 1.
Stage 1, the primordial state. A period of relative stability may be remembered as a golden age, often with that different relationship to nature or the divine we talked about.
Right. Then stage 2, intervention or disruption. This is where new knowledge or technology arrives, maybe developed internally, like our AI or CRISPR, or perceived as coming from an external agent, like the Watchers in myth, or aliens in modern folklore.
Stage 3, the age of hubris. This follows the disruption. It's characterized by rapid technological advancement, but happening alongside or maybe even causing social and moral decay. Think corruption, inequality, building those towers.
Our modern Tower of Babel moment.
Yeah.
Which leads to stage 4, systemic destabilization. This is where the society's complexity, its internal contradictions, its corruption, all sort of snowball and overwhelm its ability to solve its own big problems. This breeds conflict, environmental damage, social breakdown. The system starts shaking.
Until you get to stage 5, the cataclysmic reset. A massive world-altering event. Could be a literal flood, an impact, a devastating pandemic, a global war, or perhaps just a complete systemic collapse from internal pressures. The result is a drastic reduction in complexity and often population.
Then if anyone's left, stage 6, the arc phase. The survival of a remnant, a small group who managed to preserve some essential knowledge, be it genetic, technological, cultural, or hopefully ethical, needed to reboot.
And finally, stage 7, rebirth and reorganization. From the ashes, a new world order emerges, often drawing on the knowledge preserved in the Ark, and the cycle begins anew, potentially leading back towards stability, or perhaps straight into a new age of hubris.
Wow. Laid out like that, it's quite a pattern. And it's fascinating how this mythological structure actually mirrors some academic ideas too, right?
It really does. Think of Joseph Tainter's work on societal collapse, arguing that societies often collapse under the weight of their own complexity when the returns on investing more complexity start diminishing. Or C.S. Holling's adaptive cycle in ecology, that cycle of growth, conservation, collapse or release, and reorganization. It seems to be a fundamental dynamic in complex systems, whether ecological or social. Myth might have just captured this deep pattern intuitively.
And that recurring element, stage 2, the intervention or disruption, often linked to these watcher figures, gods, Apkallu, aliens. What could these actually be if we speculate beyond literal interpretations?
That's maybe the deepest question in all this. And yeah, pure speculation territory here. The most straightforward is still the extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH, actual beings from another star system interacting with us periodically.
Okay, what else?
Then there's the extratemporal hypothesis, time travelers, perhaps from our own future, trying to intervene or observe key moments, maybe subtly influencing events. Or the interdimensional hypothesis, entities from a parallel reality or maybe a higher spatial dimension that intersects with ours occasionally.
Those all involve some kind of other intelligence existing separately from us.
Right, but then there's a more philosophical take, like the consciousness hypothesis, which people like Jeffrey Kripal explore. This suggests these phenomena might not be physical craft or beings in the conventional sense at all.
So what then?
Maybe they're related to consciousness itself. Perhaps they're projections from our collective unconscious, archetypes taking on a tangible form during times of great societal stress or transformation. Or maybe they represent encounters with non-local forms of mind, aspects of reality beyond our normal perception that become more accessible when civilization is unstable. In this view, the Watchers are, in a profound way, a reflection of us, or maybe a deeper layer of reality interacting with us.
That's a lot to chew on. So if we take this cyclical pattern, these stages, and we look at our current global situation, where do we seem to fit? The parallels feel, well, a bit unsettling.
They are unsettling. When you assess our current trajectory against that archetypal cycle, we tick a disturbing number of boxes for stage 3, the age of hubris, and arguably stage 4, systemic destabilization. We have absolutely unprecedented technological power, AI, genetic engineering, global comms coexisting with rampant, documented global corruption, escalating geopolitical tensions, deep social and economic divides, and a planetary environmental crisis that we seem unable to collectively address.
Our ability to tackle these huge, self-inflicted threats seems to be weakening, not strengthening. That confusion of tongues you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It prevents unified action, prevents meaningful progress on existential risks. And in that context, something like the fringe claim of a 2027 UFO event, it really should be read, I believe, not as a literal prediction, but as a potent cultural symptom.
A symptom of what?
A symptom of a widespread, maybe often subconscious, recognition that our current path feels unsustainable. It's a modern cry from the collective psyche, mirroring the ancient myths where the earth itself cried out. It's the 21st century projecting its deep anxieties and its desperate hope for intervention onto the contemporary mythic figures. The aliens, the external force that might just reset the board.
So ultimately digging into all this, the floods, the watchers, dabble, the cycles, the real value isn't trying to predict if or when a reset happens.
No, I don't think so. The enduring value is understanding the recurring patterns of civilizational fragility, the timeless warnings embedded in these narratives. They're about the dangers of hubris, the insidious poison of corruption, and the immense responsibility that comes with powerful knowledge.
They're like a user's manual almost for navigating civilizational risk.
That's a good way to put it. A user's manual passed down through millennia, and the core message seems to be, when you build your arcs, your plans for the future, your ways of preserving what matters, don't just focus on the seeds and the steel, the data and the tech. Remember the forgotten cargo, the wisdom, the justice, the humility. Because without those, the manual suggests we're probably doomed to just repeat a cycle that's as old as human memory itself. What stands out most to you about these cycles?